I'm recording this story at the beginning of 2021 on the 3rd of January, but this is quite a stressful time. Now, we know that 2020 has been a stressful year, but in England on January the 31st, we have a deadline for submitting all the information we need to the Inland Revenue, which is to say the tax gatherers of our country. So this is a bit stressful, and at the back of my head I've got a nagging worry about getting everything ready. So this is dedicated, this story, to the Inland Revenue, to the tax collectors, and I hope that you're going to be kind to us this year. And this is a story about Nasruddin, sometimes a foolish wise man or a wise fool. Stories about him all over the Middle East, and in Turkey he's sometimes Nasruddin Hodja, the Hodja, meaning the wise man. So this is a story about the Hodja, and this is the story of the Hodja's day off, and this is how I will tell it to you. If you are wise and known to be wise, if you are known to be one of the wisest men in the world, the wisest man in your region, the wisest man in your village, life can be quite taxing because you're never left alone. Always people are coming to you for advice about how to make their marriages work, how to do well in their jobs, how to do well as students, how to do well at being themselves. All the kind of questions that a man of wisdom should be able to answer. And the Hodja had had enough. He was exhausted. He needed a day off. So he left the village and went down to the river. And he put his arms behind his head and he stretched out in the grass next to the river, and he sighed a contented sigh, for at last he could close his eyes and think of nothing except the sound of the water running past him, nothing but the sound of the leaves blowing in the trees, nothing but the sound of the birds singing, nothing but the sound of the man screaming. Screaming? The Hodja opened his eyes and sat up quickly, and he looked. He looked down the river, and there was nothing. He looked up the river, and there, being swept down towards him, was a man in the water, and the man was drowning. "Help! Help!" he was crying. But running down the side of the river were the villagers, and the villagers were running down trying to save the man, and as they were running by the side of the river, they were shouting to him, "Quick! Give us your hand! Give us your hand!" But the man did nothing but drown in front of them. The Hodja sighed and stood up and walked to the edge of the river. He saw the man getting closer to him. "Help! Help!" He saw the villagers running. "Quick, give us your hand! Give us your hand!" But as the drowning man was swept towards the Hodja, he reached out his hand, and as the drowning man came level with him, he said, "Quick, take my hand!" And to the villagers' amazement, as they ran towards the Hodja, they saw the drowning man reach out his hand from the water, clasp the Hodja's wrist, and the Hodja pulled him with all his might out of the water and onto the ground. And as the poor man sat sodden and panting, gasping for breath, the villagers gathered round him and the Hodja, and they looked at the Hodja and said, "Oh, we know that you are the wisest man in our village, in this region, one of the wisest men in the world. But how did you save this man? We kept crying to him, 'Quick, give us your hand, give us your hand,' but he was drowning in front of us and would do nothing to help himself." And the Hodja looked at the villagers and shook his head and said, "Why, don't you recognize him? Don't you know who this is? You said, 'Give us your hand, give us your hand.' But this is the tax collector. I said, 'Take my hand.' And he took it. For the tax collector gives nothing." And that is my story of the Hodja's day off, and that is how I have told it to you.